Hey there. This is actually the first, just straight up, just for YouTube, thing I recorded. I decided, I think for the War of the Yokai readings, it just will be better if I do these as a recorded bit instead of a live stream. Because they really don't, they don't draw on a lot of people. I concede it's a niche. I do enjoy sharing these, and I don't plan on stopping. So I think this is the better way of doing this. So going forward, I'll be doing these on the Discord server. Like right now, I'm actually in the voice chat of my Discord server. I will be doing these there, so if you want to come listen to these live, that's the place to go. There is no schedule. I'm sorry. It occurs to me this is the first one of these I'm doing with the new model, so that's cool. But yeah, we'll probably go for an hour or so. Yeah. Without further ado, let's continue from where we left off. A couple hours went by before Usako decided she'd gotten enough sun and needed a break. It didn't hurt that her stomach had started grumbling either. These days, it wasn't getting as much food thanks to the diet Emiko had helped her with. She was still getting her nutrition, of course, just in smaller, much healthier portions. Already she'd noticed that her stomach had begun to flatten. And when coupled with the extreme exercise routine she'd been on, she could feel abs underneath what was still there. That made her more than a little excited. Oh, crap. And that made her more than a little excited. She'd always wanted a physique like Emmy's. Oh, and what a physique she had, too. The pinkette was visibly swooning at the memory of Emiko in her fancy green bikini. So enraptured was she that she happened to collide with the very same person she was presently pining for, Emiko. We have to stop meeting like this, she giggled, helping Usako up. It's not good for your health. Sorry, Emmy-chan, apologized a blushing Usako. Emmy was covered with a towel now, but even still, Usako couldn't help but think about her. I was just, getting a snack. I'm pretty hungry right now. Sorry. It's alright, Uso-chan, smiled Emiko. While we're on this trip, you can cheat your diet a bit. It's fine. You'll likely need the extra carbs anyhow. She grabbed Usako by the hand and started leading her down the hall. Come on, galleys this way. I'm sure they'll have something for you. They were about to pass an alcove when an idea struck Usako. Pulling Emmy closer, something easier said than done, she rolled the two of them into the hidden area. With so little room, the two of them were practically pressed against one another. I was thinking, the only snack I want is you, Emmy-chan, said Usako in the best seductive voice she could muster, though it ended up sounding more awkward and stilted than anything, as she pursed her lips and giggled. What do you say? I'd say I thought you'd never ask, replied Emiko smoothly, leaning down and pressing her own lips against Usako's, and feeling a strong sensation of electricity pass through her. So this is what a real kiss felt like then. It must, she thought, her eyes closed and her arms wrapped around her girlfriend. They shared this romantic moment together for several minutes, just embracing and kissing, before Usako pulled back a bit. Wow! That was unreal, she exclaimed, excited. My first kiss. And it was with Emmy-chan. I'm so happy. Emiko opened her mouth to say something about the jolt she'd felt, but Usako's stomach practically roared in defiance, crying out to be fed. Sorry, Emmy-chan, but I think I really need to get something to eat now. Making their way in, they saw Christina, hunched over in the corner, her tan skin now concerningly pale. Rather than risk startling the clearly unwell werewolf by approaching her, Usuko knocked on the wall to announce her presence instead. Christina turned slowly to face them, and it was clear she was feeling awful. Her eyes were glassy and bloodshot. All the color was drained from her face. And there was a bucket in front of her that Usuko had a good idea what it was for. "Oh, Takibana-san," she groaned weakly. "Sorry, I think something I ate." She quickly whipped around and promptly utilized the trash can again. "I think that the fish is bad. Tell Lady Maria I'm sorry, but I need to sit this one out." "Somehow I don't think that'll be a problem," replied Usuko, her appetite well and truly demolished for now. About half an hour later, the captain came down in order to deliver some bad news. Apparently, there was bad weather coming, and they needed to divert their course to avoid it. Sarah and Hyoka offered to try and use their combined powers to dissipate the storm, but that idea was quickly shot down, as there was no guarantee that they wouldn't accidentally make it worse. Instead, using Sarah's wind powers to create a strong tailwind, the Tingler was sent far enough out of the way that by the time night fell, they could stand on the ship's bow and watch the faraway flashes of lightning. For some reason, Emiko could feel an odd tickle in her ears whenever there was a closer flash, but she paid it no mind. The only ones not currently up on deck were Hyoka, who was on the phone with Junji and telling him all about the ship and the trip so far, and Nonami, who had gone down to her cabin to wash up and prepare for bed. She had made sure her travel coffin had been brought aboard before the ship left dock, and the sight of it in her room made her feel comfortable. It wasn't like she couldn't have slept on the bed provided. It looked quite comfortable, but she had always had trouble sleeping without the familiar and rather snug confines of that pine box. Pulling off her robe and unhooking her bikini, she strolled into the bathroom and started up the shower. Passing by the mirror, she took a moment to admire the golden tan she had gotten, which had created an incredibly noticeable series of tan lines where her bikini had been. It was a common misbelief that vampires had no reflection, an old superstition that had somehow become ingrained in modern pop culture. Nonami didn't mind, and was rather grateful for the ability to see herself. Removing her yokai crystal, she immediately shifted into her true form as she finished disrobing and stepped into the shower. Today had been rather nice, she thought. Just a day to relax and prepare for what was coming tomorrow. Nonami knew everyone was rather dreading it to some degree or another, but she wasn't. She relished the idea of being able to work on mastering her new elemental powers. As she started devising a strategy for tomorrow, the lights aboard the ship began to flicker before going out completely. Sighing, Nonami shut off the water and wrapped a towel around her body before making her way towards the door. She could hear a commotion up above, though it didn't sound like there was danger. More like excitement? She climbed the stairs that led to the deck, opening the door, and was greeted by the sight of Emiko shooting a bolt of lightning from her fingertips, which just barely missed striking her, though the resulting shockwave sent her flying back into the wall with a shout of, "Mein Gott!" Immediately, everyone rushed over to help her up, and fortunately she was only a little shaken. What was that?" she asked, her voice wavering. It looked like Emiko shot electricity? Usuko, did you teach her a spell?" The pinkette shook her head. No, besides you told me these spells only work for vampires and my kind. We're just as confused as you are. Nonami, I am so sorry, exclaimed Emiko. I don't know how this happened, but please tell me you're all right. Oh, God! Ay, Begora! Whoa, Issei-san, nice! So shameless! Ooh, sorry. Suddenly, everyone was diverting their gaze from her and blushing like mad. Glancing down, Nonami realized her towel had come completely undone when she had been knocked back, and everything was currently on full display. That night was the first time anyone had ever heard Nonami Issei scream in embarrassment. You are welcome, Nonami fans. Sorry. Why aren't Usakawa and I allowed to bunk together? The shout of frustration belonged to Emiko. Since a night aboard the ship hadn't been planned, there weren't enough rooms prepared for everyone to get their own. So it was decided they would bunk two to a room. Nonami had been the one to choose who was going where, and Emiko had been less than thrilled with her decision. Gathered in Nonami's stateroom were herself, Emiko, and Rei. The latter of the two who had just been informed they would be sharing a room tonight. Oh no, that's not. I'm tired, sorry. The latter two who had just been informed they would be sharing a room tonight, and Emiko wasn't having it. Look, we have a busy day ahead of us tomorrow, Nonami replied, wearing a set of old-fashioned pajamas. I can't risk any hanky-panky in the night between you two. I'm sorry. I can't believe I even have to say this, muttered an embarrassed Emiko. It's not like we're gonna have sex or anything. Jeez, Nonami! I know that, replied Nonami, but even still, it would look improper. You two are in a relationship, and that's fine. I'm all for it. That being said, there are certain protocols that have to be followed for non-married personnel, such as you two. You understand, I hope? Come on, you'll be fine, Amici, giggled Rei, bouncing with glee. Emiko slowly turned to her. A dumbfounded look chiseled onto her features. The fuck did you just call me? She slurred. You know what? Fine. Whatever. I'm going to bed now. With sparks zipping from her hair as she turned to make her way to the room she'd be sharing with Rei, Emiko stomped off, slamming the door behind her. The distant sound of a wooden beam clonking her in the head, followed by a short string of cursing, could be heard as the Tingler got her revenge. Still need to figure out where those lightning powers of hers came from, commented Nonami to Rei. Kobayashi-kun, I'd like you to ask her if she's noticed any recent changes in herself that may have led to this. Will do, replied Rei with a nod. I wonder if it's, related to us and our powers. Maybe she got adored too and we just didn't notice? Nonami pondered that for a moment before shaking her head. No, I don't think so. We scoured that footage so much, there's no way a fifth orb could have been missed. Perhaps it is related to Usako, though. What do you mean, Nanami? Asked the pinkette as she came out of the bathroom, having just finished her shower. She had changed into her night clothes, an oversized t-shirt about 4 sizes too big, so as to cover her lower half as well as a dress might. Oh, nothing right now, answered Nonami. We're just speculating where Emiko's powers may have come from. I don't suppose you have any ideas? Not really, replied Usako. I mean, well, it might sound silly, but you see, earlier we had our first kiss, right? OMG! Cheered Rei, interrupting Usako. Congrats! Thanks, Ray. Anyway, last time I kissed Emmy on the cheek, I got my new form, right? Maybe, like, her love is blessed and it gives us badass superpowers? Somehow I find that illogical, replied Onami with a sigh. But knowing you, it's not entirely out of the realm of possibility. We may have to look into it later. Ray let out a tremendous yawn as she stood up and made her way to the cabin door. I'm gonna go get ready to, settle in then, if you don't mind. Sleep tight. Good night. Good night, Ray, replied Usuko with a smile, turning to Nonami. So what's on the agenda tonight? Scary movie? Video games? Pizza? Well, maybe not pizza. Probably can't get delivery in the middle of the ocean, huh? Nonami sighed with a small laugh. I'm sorry, Usuko, but I'm heading to bed now. As I said to Emiko earlier, we have a busy day tomorrow once we make land. I'm sorry, though maybe once we're home we can have something akin to what's it called again? A slumber party? Asked Usuko. That would be fun, actually. I've never been to one before. Then it's settled, replied Onami as she lifted her coffin's lid and crawled in. When we get back, we'll have a slumber party. Good night, Usuko. Sleep well. See dreams, Aunt Maria, yawned Usuko, crawling into bed as the lights turned themselves off. Usuko was tossing and turning relentlessly as she slept, locked in a nightmare she couldn't escape. She was being chased by a creature, a hulking shadow with a dozen eyes. Just as it swiped at her with its massive shredder claws, an otherwise fatal blow, the scene shifted. Now she was surrounded by much larger shadows lumbering about, some the size of a car, some larger than buildings. As she reached out to touch one, there was the sound of screams. To her horror, when she looked down, she was holding a limp, headless body that she could almost recognize as... And then it shifted again, and she was underwater, swimming towards a massive submerged city beneath the waves. Then, another creature. It opened its beak and let out a thunderous scream. Just imagine an eagle screech there. Sorry. Usuko shot up in bed, her entire body covered in cold sweat. That had been too realistic to have just been a regular old dream. She thought about waking Nonami, but wasn't sure if she should bother her aunt with this right now. To be honest, Usuko wasn't even completely sure she even understood what she saw. She happened to glance out the porthole then and saw a light seemingly on the horizon. The sun? What time is it? She mumbled, checking her phone. 3:33 a.m. So not the sun, then, she said to herself, getting out of bed and putting a pair of pajama pants on. Might as well take a look. I'm probably not getting back to sleep anytime soon. Silently making her way to the deck, Usuko was greeted with an interesting and rather unique sight. Dozens of balls of light, some red, some green or blue, some white or even yellow and orange, danced on the surface of the waves. Their movements seemed random, and at first Usuko thought they were beach balls with lights in them, perhaps a remnant of a party that had gone through here earlier. That was until one of the lights shot closer to the boat, as if to investigate it, before rejoining its brethren in their mysterious dance. They're called sea sprites, came a voice from behind Usuko. It was Nonami in her vampire form. Beautiful, aren't they? They are, replied Usuko. Well, what are they? Spirits? Nonami shrugged. If you believe the stories, they're the spirits of the dead from shipwrecks, trying to find their way home. The truth is, no one knows what they are, but they're almost certainly related to the same phenomenon that causes the famous Marfa lights in Texas. Lydia showed them to me once, and they looked very much like these. Wow, hard to believe there's stuff even you guys don't understand, remarked Usuko, eliciting a small laugh from Nonami. I suppose it must look that way from outside, yeah. Even myths have myths. But do those myths have their own tales to tell? That was well said, whispered Usuko. Did you write that? I did, replied Nonami. There was a brief period in the 1960s where I wrote poetry non-stop. That one in particular was written, September 25th, 1962, as I recall. The two continued to watch the sprites for a few moments, before Nonami spoke again. Is everything all right, Usuko? I didn't mention it before, but you look rather frazzled. Usuko glanced at Nonami for a second before answering. Well, physically, I guess. I had a nightmare, but there was more to it than that, just a scary dream. It felt real. Well, the gift of foresight does tend to be hereditary, and Ferris certainly had it, replied Nonami ponderously. Perhaps it is starting to awaken in you? That's what scares me, muttered Usuko before explaining to Nonami what happened, or at least to the best of her ability. If the information fazed her, Nonami didn't show it, simply closing her eyes and laying a hand on Usuko's shoulder before embracing her. I'm sure everything will turn out okay in the end, she lied, so as to not concern her niece. It's possible you only saw what may be and not what will be. Like a wise man once said, always in motion the future is. Sure thing, Master Yoda, giggled Usuko, some of the stress melting away. Thank you, Aunt Maria. Is it okay if I keep calling you that? Well, maybe just when it's only the two of us, sighed Nonami. I do rather find myself enjoying the name, though. Soon enough, the two of them returned to their room and went back to sleep, with Usuko requesting Nonami use a little vampiric hypnosis to knock her out. From there, the rest of the night passed uneventfully, and come 9 a.m., the first signs of land were starting to appear on the horizon. A still tired Usuko trudged up onto the deck, still enveloped in her blanket, after the calls of "Land ho!" had awoken her. To her mild surprise, only Sarah and Ray were present to witness the smoking peak of Kaiju Island's apparently still active volcano peek into view. Though they couldn't see it from where they stood, if they had been arriving by air, they would have seen that the entirety of the island was ringed by a wall of jagged rocks that nearly encircled the entire sea surrounding it. The island itself was roughly shaped like a circle, with a perimeter, with a beach ringing nearly the entire perimeter. On the east side of the island was a grassy hill area that stopped suddenly, ending in a jagged cliff face that almost looked like something had taken a bite out of it, and an upwards curving barren and rocky peninsula stretching out from its most northeastern point. The center of the island was predominantly jungle, with a patch of burned and charred land where the volcano's lava tended to flow down. Said lava flows had begun to create a new peninsula of black stone on the southern tip, but for now it was just a spit of land. The volcano itself was impressive, standing at nearly 3 kilometers high, with a sharp vertical slope. It looked almost like a child's drawing of a volcano brought to life. The western sector, where they would soon make landfall, was predominantly beaches and sand, interspersed with the occasional palm tree. Even from such a distance, Usuko could almost make out the giant forms of mysterious creatures lazing on the white sand, soaking up some of the day's first light. "Whoa!" exclaimed the Pinkette. "That's it, huh? What are those things?" One of the sailors turned to face Usuko. "Can't be sure this far out, but probably range beasts," he said. "They're usually found on the beaches, especially this time of day." "Range beast, huh?" said Usuko contemplatively. "That's a weird name, but hey, what do I know?" "Oh, that's not what we call them, Usuko," explained Ray. "It's what they call themselves. A lot of the creatures we're going to see on the ship are, really smart. Like human level, or nearly." For some reason, then, the boat came to a sudden stop with a loud creak. The wind was still blowing, quite strongly in fact, but the Tingler was stuck fast. At first, Usuko thought they must have run aground against a rock or something. This part of the ocean seemed to be chocker-full of them. But what she saw a moment later answered her question in a most terrifying way. The water around the ship began bubbling, the surface sloshing and knocking the vessel around. From beneath the surface, a shadow grew larger and larger as it approached the stuck ship. At last, a colossal octopus head erupted out of the ocean a short distance away, before slowly making its way to the side of the ship. It was then that Vince came onto the deck, seemingly unbothered by the beast currently keeping his ship from moving. Usuko, for her part, was absolutely frozen in terror, and even Ray, though seemingly not too afraid either, had paled a little. "Good morning," came the voice of the captain as he addressed the Kraken and held out a large sheet of written paper. "I am Captain Vince Prince of the Tingler. If you'd be so kind as to take a look at this manifest, you'll see that this voyage was approved by His Majesty, King Turtentek, as well as Gardner, Japan." One of the mighty cephalopod's eyes rolled towards the paper, seeming to scan it for a second, before giving an approximation of a nod and sliding below the surface once more. Immediately, the Tingler was sailing again, as the Kraken's hold on the ship released. "Security," Vince replied before Usuko could ask. "Only one way in or out of the island, unless you're flying in, which I don't recommend. The rocks take it as a challenge. Having a guard like the Kraken at the entrance makes it a simple matter to make sure only those who are authorized get in. The ones that aren't feed it." That didn't completely sit right with Usuko. What if it was someone who just stumbled in by accident? It wasn't their fault. "This is unfortunately true," replied Vince when Usuko voiced her thoughts on the matter. "But the location of Kaiju Island needs to remain a secret from the world at large. If it means a few innocent lives are occasionally lost, they will be mourned, but that's how it must be." With that cheery thought in mind, they made their way to the nearest safe spot on the beach, disembarking. Nonami was the last to leave, her coffin proving too cumbersome to adequately bring with, much to her regret. Ray, however, knowing her friend's plight, went right to work, carving a new one from some nearby trees. As Usuko took in the incredible sights around her, she realized the Tingler was leaving. "Hey, wait!" she cried. "Come back with my stuff!" Let me try that again. "Hey, wait!" she cried. "Come back with my stuff!" I'll take it. "Don't worry, Usuko," said Nonami calmly. "They'll not be far. Just outside the stone ring, in case there's an emergency. For this training to reach maximum success, we'll need to rough it as best we can. So wait, I have to..." Usuko practically gagged on the words. "Sleep? In nature? No bed? No. No tent? Nope. Not even a sleeping bag and a tarp? 9. In a flash, Usuko was in the water, swimming as fast as she could towards the boat. Come back and save me! She cried, but despite her best efforts, she just couldn't catch up. Can someone go get her? Sighed the vampire, face-palming. Preferably before one of the sea monsters does. On it, said Emiko, shifting to Shotendoji and flying to pick up Usuko out of the water. Just in the nick of time, too, for as she lifted her out, a massive pair of shark-like jaws came crashing out of the water, snapping shut just shy of Usuko's dangling feet, before splashing back down into the water. I think I'll stay on the land now, she whispered weakly. Once back on shore, Emiko changed back and pointed to a nearby tree. Go change out of those wet clothes, Uso-chan, she sighed, shaking her head. I'll see if Ray can use her power to dry them out for you. Sorry, Emi-chan. Sorry, Emi-chan, replied a penitent sound, I can't read! Sorry, Emi-chan, replied a penitent-sounding Usuko. Thanks for saving me. It was no big deal, sighed Emiko. Just don't do it again. This place is extremely dangerous. Nodding, Usuko went behind a tree and peeled off her seawater-soaked clothes, before sliding them out to Emiko, who promptly handed them off to the Red Oni. Ray laid them neatly on the sand before firing a mini flamethrower in the air over them for a few seconds. When it was done, Usuko's outfit smelled slightly singed, but it was completely dry. Now that everyone is present and accounted for, said Nonami from beneath the shade of a nearby palm tree, allow me to explain why we're here. This island is a microcosm of differing biomes, from jungle to sea to volcano, desert, and more. These will allow those of us with elemental abilities the best possible circumstances in which to practice with our new powers. As we practice, you would do well to keep your eyes peeled for any of the power totems left behind by the ancients. Nonami couldn't help but make a mental note of just how odd that sentence sounded. Before that, however, we will need to find a shelter for the nights ahead. The daylight hours here are safe enough, relatively speaking, but at night there are things that come out even I wouldn't wish to contend with. So then, what we'll do is this. Each of us will go our separate ways for now, and try to find either a cave or a secure enough ruin for us to hole up in at night. If you find such a thing, send up a flare of your power to signal the rest of us. Hopefully we can manage this before noon. Any questions? Both Hyoka and Usuko raised their hands simultaneously. Their question was simple. What are the things that come out at night? Pray you don't ever find out, was Nonami's only reply. With that cheery thought in mind, the team split up, taking to the skies above, though avoiding going too high so as to not risk earning the ire of the island's flyers. Usuko couldn't help but to just fly around on the island on her white feathery wings for a while, taking in the scenery. Even someone who despised nature like she did found the natural, unspoiled beauty of Kaiju Island to be absolutely breathtaking. Down below, she spotted a small river flowing down towards the ocean and zipped down to check it out. As she got closer, she could see that the water flowed from a nearby snow-covered mountaintop, which meant, if she recalled Nonami's briefing correctly, it was a source of fresh water. Sure, Hyoka could generate the same water if they got into a pinch, but it would save her the trouble. Plus, running water meant kinetic energy for the spirits. Immediately after touching down, Usuko started looking for a cave or something else to use for shelter. This seemed to be a perfect area. At least, it did until she fell with a loud yelp through what at first seemed to be solid ground, but was actually a patch of sticks and leaves covering a deep hole. she moaned a moment later, having landed on her back and getting the wind knocked out of her. Where the hell am I? Looking around, Usuko found herself in an odd, dimly lit chamber that went up nearly 40 feet. How she managed to survive the fall was beyond her, though she chalked it up to her inhuman side. As her eyes adjusted to the darkness, she was able to see the place better, though what she saw did not instill her with any comfort whatsoever. All around her were bones. Skulls of all types surrounded her. Some seemed human, some had fangs or horns, some had 4 eye sockets, some looked canine or even feline, and some she couldn't even begin to identify. One thing was for sure, though. Usuko really didn't like her odds of getting out of here all of a sudden. Maybe I can just fly up, she said to herself, wincing in pain as she attempted to beat her wings. Ouch! Definitely broken. Crap. I can't reach them to use a healing spell either. Oh, what am I gonna do? Standing up, she checked to see if anything else had broken. Nope. She looked to be in one piece, if not sore all over. Using her light power to create a floating orb of luminescence that would follow her, she began exploring the place she now found herself in. The chamber was massive, stretching for nearly 60 yards in every direction, curving upwards in a dome shape. And fortunately enough, it seemed that only the area she had fallen into was a bone zone. As for the most part, the chamber was clean. Not even a spider web or a mouse seemed to call this place home. One thing was for sure. If she could get out of this hellhole, she definitely found their base. Then she noticed a tunnel at the back of the chamber. A jagged crack in the otherwise smooth wall. Maybe it was the way to the surface, she thought as she sprinted towards it. Leave. A deep, growling voice manifested from within the tunnel. Usuko gasped and scrambled backwards as she could just make out an enormous humanoid shape emerging from it. I'm sorry, I'm trying, she cried, motioning to her limp wings now stained with mud. But I think I broke my wings when I fell, and now I'm stuck down here, unless there's another way out. The being lumbered closer, and as he did, Usuko could start to better make out what he looked like. Whatever he was tall, easily 12 feet in height, practically oozing with immense power, and was covered from head to toe in pitted, faded blue and gold armor. His arms were long and powerful looking, ending in 4 clawed fingers, one of which gripped a claymore nearly as long as he was. His golden torso armor was spiked, though it seemed age had dulled them to a degree. Or, Usuko thought grimly, maybe the many victims' bones had. His face was hidden behind a large gold mask, which was cracked in dozens of places and almost seemed to be held together by sheer willpower alone. Behind that mask burned 2 reddish-orange eyes that glowed like flames. Anything else the mask may have hidden, though, was a mystery to the Pinkette, as it appeared to cover his entire head. I'm the one who guards the gate, he declared, still lumbering towards her. If you wish to obtain that which I have been tasked to protect, you must first face me. What? What? Said the now thoroughly confused Usuko. Buddy, I genuinely don't know what you're talking about. I fell down here by accident and just want to get back to the surface. The being paused. Though hidden behind the curved mask he wore, Usuko could almost make out a confused expression on his face. So you are not here to obtain that which I have been tasked to guard for over 5 million years? I mean, yes, answered Usuko firmly. I'm just here with my friends to do some elemental power training. That's all.
Elemental powers, you say?
His voice sounded nearly wistful as he said that, as though it dredged up an old memory.
I will guide you to the surface, child. If you wish to use this chamber, and this chamber only, as your training ground, I will allow this.
Well, that was a huge 360, Usuko thought, but not wanting to look a gift horse in the mouth, she bowed. She bowed. Thank you, what should I call you? The being laughed, a raspy, guttural sound, as he guided her to the entrance.
My name hasn't been spoken in well over 6 million years. I barely even remember it myself. Call me what you will.
Okay, then, how about Steve?
Steve,
he said, as if trying it out.
Yes. Yes, this is a name worthy of a being such as me. I shall be Steve. And you?
Usuko, she replied with a smile. Upon reaching what at first seemed a dead end, Steve rolled a massive boulder out of the way and motioned for Usuko to proceed out.
I shall await your return then, Usuko.
His voice, previously cordial, then returned to its previous grim and serious tone.
However, remember this. I give you permission to only practice in the antechamber we were just in. If you proceed down the tunnel I emerged from, I will be forced to cut you down.
To emphasize this point, Steve leveled the massive claymore in front of Usuko's face for a moment, before sheathing it on his back. Understood, she said with a gulp, turning around for a moment. I'm gonna signal them here. Might want to shield your eyes, okay, big guy? She turned to face him, but Steve had apparently already retreated back to his cave. Huh, weird. Anyway, yeah, let's hope they see it. Usuko raised her right arm, fist clenched, as a glowing ball of red light formed around her hand that grew by the second. When it was nearly the size of a beach ball, she opened her palm and sent a pillar of ruby red light into the sky. She allowed this pillar to exist for a solid 20 seconds before allowing it to dissipate. If they hadn't seen it by now, they wouldn't. The Pinkette wouldn't have to wait long as she saw Sarah come flying towards her, followed shortly by Ray and Hyoka. So you found something good for us, Usuko? Ugh, let me get a drink and try that again. So you found something good for us, Usuko? Asked the Banshee rhetorically. She knew Usuko wouldn't have signaled the team if she hadn't. I did. Let's wait till everyone gets here. I don't want to have to repeat myself. They wouldn't have to wait much longer for Emiko and Nonami, the vampire being the last to arrive. Immediately, Usuko went into detail about her flight, the stream of water nearby, her fall, the chamber, and of course Steve. It was the last detail that seemed to startle everyone, that is, except for Emiko. So someone else lives here? Asked Hyoka. I thought it was just kaiju. I've never heard of anything quite like what you described, Usuko, said Nonami. Are you sure you described him correctly? She did. The voice was Emiko's, as the Blue Oni princess. If anyone knew all the secrets and mysteries of this island, it was going to be her. He's lived here since before the island came to be, she explained. The legends state he is the guardian of an unknown treasure, one that fell from the heavens eons ago. One that has power beyond anything you could ever dream. It's the other reason this island is locked down tight. If word ever got out about this treasure, if it is what they say it is, it must never be released. Okay, breathed Ray. Someone been drinking the salt water? Ray, I'm being serious here. We would do well to heed the warning Steve, corrected Usako, as a herd of what looked like car-sized cows with alligators' jaws and spines waddled by. Pardon? I named him Steve. You're kidding, right? Absolutely not. All right, then. We'll need to heed the warning Steve gave us. He will absolutely do his best to slaughter us if he deems us a threat to this treasure. I doubt even me being who I am would do much good. As I said, he was here first. Ray held up a hand, a befuddled look on her face. So, wait, we're just gonna, trust Mr. Literally Made of Knives to honor his word and not, kill us? She exclaimed. Does anyone else just find this, a little sus? Considering he had every opportunity to kill me back there and didn't, I'd say it's fine, replied Usako. And I've seen you in action, Kobayashi-kun, added Nonami. I don't think there's a force alive or dead on this planet that could beat you. How about this, came Emiko. I'll go and talk to him, we'll establish a rapport, and go from there. While I'm doing that, the rest of you can, I don't know, go explore something. I bet you'll find some totems, if nothing else. Well, that seemed to satisfy everyone, though Ray still had her compunctions about the whole thing. Nonami offered to come with, as team leader and all, but Emiko declined. Her being Aiomea would have far more sway than either Nonami's own royal title or her role as leader, and so did she enter the cavern. Sorry. While these events played out, things back in Fumizaki weren't exactly quiet. Lydia had been personally keeping watch over Elizabeth's hospital room, as the Dompier had suffered some intense internal injuries and lacerations that had kept her bedridden even all this time later. She was on the road to recovery, but it would definitely take time. She had tried talking to her former friend, if only out of boredom, but Lydia pretended not to hear her. The sound of footsteps could be heard approaching, and Elizabeth could see Lydia's face and ears perk up. Hey, Marty, good to see you, said Lydia, standing up to hug her best friend. Glad you could make it. I know you had just gotten back to Camelot when I called. Sorry about that. Mildred had left a couple weeks after the breakout, once the worst of her wounds had healed, as she'd had a mountain of paperwork to deal with in regards to it. She'd received the call about Elizabeth literally seconds after walking through the front gate of the castle, much to her severe chagrin. No, it's fine, she sighed, waving her hand dismissively. I'm quite glad you did, honestly. From the moment I learned she was alive, I've been wanting to speak with her, but certain obstacles kept getting in my way. The way she said obstacles sounded almost aggressive to Lydia. She knew that Mildred had taken the news that their former ally was alive with a double dose of incredulity and anger. You may, of course, speak to her if you like, said Lydia, pretending not to have heard the venom in her friend's voice. I'll just give y'all some privacy. Entering the room and closing the door behind her, Mildred's face was an emotionless mask that was impossible to read. When she took hold of a nearby chair and brought it closer, though, Elizabeth could see her hands were shaking. Kosaka, she whispered coldly, not deigning to speak her first name. I know what you did to Tetsuo. Elizabeth just smirked. You think I care? I want you to know. Oh, Marty. Marty. Always so self-righteous. Always so quick to anger. And to think you were our leader, she cackled weakly. I'm taking a wild guess here, and I'm gonna say you're the one responsible for my, diet. You're lucky to get that at all, replied Mordred, her voice wavering ever so slightly. "I should let you starve to death. Maybe take your cell and toss it to the bottom of the ocean, huh? Waste away, alone and forgotten?" Elizabeth didn't say anything, only keeping a veneer of smugness on her features. "Oh, come off it," she growled. You ain't got anything to be smug about. You're one air's breath away from You're one air's breath away from biting the big one." "You always were so fun to annoy." Mordred couldn't help it. In a flash, she smacked Elizabeth as hard as she could. Only the barest remains of her self-control kept her from summoning her armor to reinforce the backhand and make it fatal. As it was, a large red welt quickly formed on the side of her face, while Lydia came rushing in to grab Mordred under the arms before she could be goaded into doing something worse. "I loved him!" she cried, wrestling against Lydia's powerful grip. We were going to get married!" "I know," she sneered with a weak laugh. "I knew I couldn't hurt you physically anymore. But that would do more damage than I ever could." "I hope it was worth it," hissed Lydia. "Soon as Ray finds out you were the one who killed her brother, you're nothing but ground meat and a memory." "I doubt that very much," sighed Elizabeth. "Nanami still needs what I know." "About Usuko." "Oh, and I hadn't mentioned it before, but those fake guards, sent by my former contemporaries, and I highly doubt it'll be their last try, either." As Lydia pulled Mordred from the room and locked the door, they could hear the Dhampir laughing, wincing, then laughing again. It may not have been apparent to an outsider looking in, but Elizabeth had won this round. Not only had she goaded the proud knight into striking an unarmed prisoner, but she knew Lydia had probably heard every word of what was said about her hand in Elizabeth's poor treatment. That would certainly strain their relationship, and that made Elizabeth grin. "Are you out of your mind?" screeched Lydia once they'd entered a nearby conference room. "I know you're the boss, but around here, we don't attack prisoners, especially ones who are in hospital bed." Mordred was seething with fury, her hands clenched in fists so tight her fingernails had broken the skin of her palms and blood was dripping. She opened her mouth to speak, but quickly closed it again. She had some very choice words to say at this moment, but the small part of her that was trying to bring ration back to her mind was screaming at her to keep them to herself. "Look," sighed Lydia, putting a reassuring hand on Mordred's shoulder. "I'm not going to pretend I know what you're feeling right now, but I can only imagine it's pain. Pain and, well, probably more than a little hate. That's exactly what she wants, you know? But I need to know. Is it true that you ordered the guards to restrict her access to the basic survival needs?" Mordred didn't say anything, grabbing Lydia's arm by the wrist and pulling it from her shoulder, then letting go. Her eyes were staring at nothing, and her tone was hollow when she spoke again. "Lydia, we've been best friends for going on 20 years now. I would think you'd understand why I would do this. Yes, I did. I made sure she'd be able to survive, but I wanted her to suffer. Suffer as much as I could make her." Without warning, she punched the closest wall, her fist going straight through the plaster and boards like paper. Her emotionless exterior cracked then, and tears flowed down her face. "I'm sorry, Lydia. I'm so sorry. I let myself get so consumed with the need to get even that I..." The once proud knight fell to her knees as the full weight of what she'd done hit her. She'd betrayed the oath she'd taken years ago to protect the denizens of both worlds. The oath to uphold the moral code of a Knight of the Round Table, which included never torturing prisoners. The oath she'd made to herself so long ago to only do good. God, forgive me, she cried. Lydia crouched down and approached her friend, embracing the broken girl in a hug that lasted nearly 20 minutes. The whole time, neither said a word, the cat girl merely using her free hand to softly stroke Modred's blonde hair. By the end of it all, part of Lydia's shirt was soaked with Modred's tears, and the girl's eyes were bloodshot red. "Feeling better?" asked Lydia softly. Modred shook her head, smiling sadly. "Only a little, but it doesn't excuse what I did." "Well, no, it doesn't," replied Lydia frankly. But the first step towards making things better is admitting you're wrong, which you have. Now you gotta make things right." Modred nodded a little in understanding, and was about to say something when a crashing noise came from outside the room, coming from near where Elizabeth was being kept. Upon exiting the room, they saw Alex the Cryptid Ranger facing down a black cloud with red fiery eyes, his musket holding it at bay for the moment. "They burst their way in," he called to them. "Don't know what they want, but I have a feeling it's the Dhampir." The small one went rushing towards her room. Green was, "Oh!" A sucker punch from the entity landed in his gut and knocked the phantom on his back. "Ah, Ms. Modred Pendragon and Mrs. Lydia Nakamoto. We meet at last," came a smooth voice from within the boiling mass of smoke. "A pleasure to make your acquaintance. My associate and I are only here to retrieve your leader. Stay back, and I promise to leave you and yours unharmed." A smoky black tendril whipped out and shattered a nearby computer without much effort. "Interfere with us, and I cannot promise you'll come out of this intact." "Sorry, no dice," said Modred, already summoning her recently repaired armor. "Lyd, Big Smoky is mine. You go check on this. Got it?" Lydia nodded once in acknowledgement before rushing towards Elizabeth's room. "All right, tall, dark, and gruesome," she called with a smirk, circling the being. She could just almost make out a faint human figure inside all the black smoke, but she couldn't be sure. That would almost definitely mean he was a shade, which meant he had something she could hit. "You want to dance this dance? Let's go!" And then she lunged, swinging the mighty Excalibur at the center of the being's mass, hoping to hit something important. In the hospital room, Lydia found Grigori in werewolf form, running laps in the corner as a small Inari child seemed to be urging Elizabeth up. "Come on," she was saying with more than a hint of panic. I can only manage that illusion for another 30 seconds before he snaps out of it. We gotta go. Russell is outside. Come on. "Stop right there," declared Lydia, pulling out a handgun and aiming it square at Elizabeth. The other girl looked to be around Carrie's age, but Lydia knew looks could always be deceiving. "Lydia, be a dear and put the gun down," said Elizabeth calmly before turning to the child. "I'm not leaving, Karine." Both people in the room were shocked by those words. But you're our leader," cried Karine, confused by what she'd said. "We need you. Mizuho is... she's terrible. She's working all the nice people to death, and the big monster keeps roaring. I don't know what she's doing, but you need to stop her." Elizabeth reached out a hand to pat the fox girl on the head. "I can't do much good right now, even if I did leave. I'm sorry, little one." Elizabeth turned to Lydia, a grim look on her face. "Let me speak to Russell for a moment, then allow them to leave peaceably, and I'll tell you everything I know about Takibana. Is that a deal?" Lydia only needed a second to consider it. Deal. Escorting Elizabeth from the room, the three beheld the sight of Modred struggling in vain while being bound in the air by smoke tendrils as the bored-looking shade glanced over at the group. "Oh, finally," he said as casually as one might say to the pizza guy. "I was wondering what the holdup was. Why is she with you?" Why is she with you? Elizabeth quickly explained to him why she wasn't leaving just yet, including the parts about her injuries and malnourishment. Russell seemed perturbed that she'd been treated that way, though when she mentioned the guards had been sent by Mizuho, he understood. His grip on Modred tightened, however, when he found out she was behind the other part. Still, most of his anger was focused on Mizuho. "Should I kill her?" he asked point blank. "No, not yet," replied Elizabeth. "I'd prefer to be the one, as I'd love nothing more than to rip her still-beating heart out of her chest and wring it dry of all its blood. But if you must, you must. For now, just wait for me." She eyed Lydia and Modred. "I will be out of here. You needn't worry. Now go." They agreed to let the two of you leave peacefully. Though Karin protested, Russell understood, leading the confused Inari out. Once they were gone and out of sight, Elizabeth turned to her former friends. "A deal is a deal," she sighed. "You want to know what Usuko is? Well, here you go. She's a unique life form. On one side of her family, she is Dweller, former vampire." "Yes, we know that, grunted Modred, still a bit sore from where she'd been held. "That only accounts for a portion, though. Perhaps a quarter, to be specific, as her father was a half-breed like me. However, as for her other half, well, that's where it gets interesting. You see, Usuko Takibana's mother was an angel." "Well, that's oddly kind of you to say," replies the confused Lydia. "But I don't see how it's relevant." "I didn't mean metaphorically," retorted Elizabeth, annoyed. "I meant literally. Tatsuya Takibana was an angel, which essentially makes Usuko the spawn of light, of both light and dark. True chaos given form." How do you know this?" asked Modred, a bit skeptical. "For one, the wings. Come on. No Dweller had wings like those. They all had black, leathery bat wings. No, Usuko's mother was an angel. I know this because that former ally of mine, Mizuho, is the one who was contracted to kill her nearly 2 years ago." "Right, and next you'll tell me the gremlins made a city-sized robot to fight the kaiju," said Modred coldly. "Look, Elizabeth, let's say I believe this crap about Mizuho, someone we know you want dead already. An angel? They don't exist. Like the chupacabra and hellhound we had locked up here without my knowledge?" asked Lydia suspiciously. Her ears were angled backwards, an indication she was feeling uncomfortable. "Seems to me a lot of what isn't supposed to exist ends up surprising us later." She turned to face Elizabeth. "Do you have any other proof to offer, other than the wings?" Elizabeth let out a peal of laughter. "Proof? Aside from what's staring you right in the face? All right, very well. You want indisputable proof? Exhume her. Exhume her body. You'll find it hasn't decayed at all and smells of roses, like the saints of old." Both women were clearly uncomfortable with the proposition, and the Dhampir could read it on their faces. Look, you don't believe me. I get it. But at this point, I have nothing to gain by lying to you." "Sick satisfaction?" "Point. We can't just dig up Usuko's mum, not without permission anyway," said Modred. Tell her she has it in her to fix what Mizuho did. replied Elizabeth, unsure herself why she was telling them this much. Angels don't die, not in the sense we do. Their souls remain in the body, hibernating for a time until another can revive them. Of course, if one is buried 6 feet underground, that presents an issue to being revived. Plus, there aren't too many people around anymore who know the spell. Mizuho and I saw to that, though I know one who remains. The look both Lydia and Mordred gave Elizabeth told her she needed to spill the beans pronto. All right. She's in New Atlantis. An ancient sorceress, even older than Clan Orlok. Fitting that the last Thunderbird would live with the mermen, as both races were ravaged by the Overus. Lydia and Mordred looked at each other. We need to get them back here, now, said the knight. I don't think that's possible, replied the cat. They're out of communications range, though we could raise the Tingler. Then we're raising it, now, commanded Mordred, making her way towards the phone. Lydia, get her back in her room and meet me in my office, all right? Lydia nodded firmly, escorting Elizabeth back to bed. As she left, the Dhampir grabbed onto her shirt. Lydia, For a moment her voice wavered, and some of the old Elizabeth seemed to come through. You were always so kind to me back then. For what it's worth. She shook her head as if to dispel any intrusive thoughts. Never mind, just go. Lydia paused in the doorframe, not looking back. While it won't cancel out all you've done, if you can look me in the eyes and tell me you're truly sorry, I can begin to forgive you. We were friends once. I owe you that much. And then she left, not giving the other a chance to reply. Elizabeth felt baffled. After everything she'd done, and part of Lydia still thought of her as a friend? Or at the very least, held on to the memory of their friendship? Maybe she needed to reconsider some things after all. Garden of Tingler, this is Lydia Nakamoto. Do you read me? Over. Lydia's voice came through sounding tinny and static-filled over the old-fashioned ship's radio, but Christina's keen ears were able to pick up the sound. It had already been 15 hours since the team made landfall without her, and the previously food-poisoned werewolf was finding herself anxious and bored as she paced the same corridors over and over again. She needed lots of room to run around in, and this cramped ship was like a nightmare. At least the sound of Lydia's voice promised a brief interlude away from the humduggery of it all. This is Christina Pavlovic, reading you loud and clear. Over. Oh, Christina. Good, and they haven't made land yet. I need you to... Have to stop you there. They left hours ago. I got food poisoning and had to stay behind. We're outside the ring now. What's wrong? Over. There was a loud thumping sound from the other end. Something Christina knew was Mordred throwing her desk. A bad habit she'd picked up from a former cop friend of hers. Apparently Mordred was there too. Something must be up. We need to speak to Usako about well, it's a personal matter. As soon as you're able, pass this message on to her, okay? Lydia then went on to relay everything she'd been told, not leaving out even a single detail. Christina's eyebrows raised in surprise, but she kept her tone professional as she replied, Roger that. If you'd like, I can try swimming there and delivering it in person if it's that urgent. Over. A pause, as Lydia seemed to be mulling over the offer. Christina knew she could likely handle the sea critters easily enough, and with Mordred still on the line, she could tell the Kraken guard to let her pass. Only if you think it's safe. You know what lurks there at night. Over. I've eaten worse. I've eaten worse, she replied with a smirk, before elaborating on how she'd need Madrid to vouch for her. As she stripped down to nothing and made her way to the edge of the deck before leaping off, she couldn't help but grin widely. Her day had just gotten a whole lot more fun. She'd definitely be able to track the team easily enough, so long as the Oni were with them. They had such a unique scent. As much as that does lead into the next part, we've been going for about an hour now. So, I think we're going to end it here. Yeah. And then I'll do another one of these soonish. It's just, you go for an hour. You read for an hour, your throat starts to get a little scratchy, all those voices. But I hope you enjoyed. Do let me know how the audio quality is on this. I'm gonna post this tonight. Other than that, I got nothing. Hope you enjoyed. Part 4 will probably be sometime in early December. I'd say maybe I don't know. Could be sooner. Maybe I'll do a weekly upload thing for this. Don't hold me to that, please. Okay. Until the next one, or I see you on stream. Have a great time. Hope you're doing good. Take care, and bye, Anara.